All right, we're going to go ahead and get started today. First question I have, does anybody in here know what is one of the most powerful things you can do to improve your overall health and wellness? Anybody got any ideas as to what? Eats? Yeah, you do have to eat. This is something that's absolutely free, and a lot of us don't do it well. And when I was asked to do this Lunch and Learn, I thought it was kind of ironic because I am the health coaching coordinator here, and I try to practice health and wellness, but there's one thing that I don't do well, and that is get proper sleep. Something that's so simple, yet it's often underestimated. So I thought the best thing I could do, since I did research on it, the best thing I could do is probably shut off the lights and we'll all take a 30-minute nap. But then I thought, well, I probably want a job tomorrow, so I thought, well, I better do something else. So just a couple things I'm going to go through. Does anybody know what sleep shaming is and why we do that to other people? Okay, sleep shaming is actually when we get the recommended amount of sleep that we need for optimum health for our bodies. But we don't ever brag about, oh gosh, I got the best 8 hours of sleep last night. Instead, when we come into work, we'll say, oh, I'm going on like 4 hours of sleep. And we think it's this great thing that we brag about, that we can live and just do our jobs on the most minimal amount of sleep that we can. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard these phrases: the early bird catches the worm, I can sleep when I'm dead, let them sleep while I grind, no rest for the weary, sleep is for people without access to the internet. So those are all things that we hear of when we think of sleep shaming. And this shameful feeling has been instilled in us because our society has an ever-increasing workaholic attitude. And the expectation is the more productive we are, the more supreme, the quicker up the ladder we're going to go. So does anybody actually sleep the recommended amount? It's something that as humans, we all have in common, but instead of using it to bring us together, we use it to compare ourselves to one another. We all vary in the amount of sleep that we need to look and feel our best. And if you stop and think, most of us really need to make it a focal part of our health and wellness goals. You don't ever hear people shaming each other because they're eating right or exercising, but we have this feeling of guilt when we actually get the recommended 8 hours of sleep that we need. And then we chase after our to-do list, everything that we have to do, and we don't fuel ourselves with the body. But our cell phones, our electronics, our iPads, we make sure, last thing we do before we go to bed at night is make sure those are plugged in because we have to have them ready for tomorrow. But we don't do that for our own bodies. And if we don't get the right amount of sleep that we need, we struggle in all areas of our life, just not health and wellness. So instead of talking about the negative first, I'm going to stick with the positives and the positive effects that sleep has on your system. Number one, it improves your memory. During sleep, your memory strengthens and you continue to practice the skills that you have learned while you are awake. So a lot of times I know growing up, if I had a test or something the next day, or like I was going to give this presentation, I went over it last thing before I went to bed, because your brain actually continues to think about the things that you've practiced during the day. Who here doesn't want a longer lifespan? It shows that people who are sleep deprived actually have a lesser quality of life and a shorter lifespan. It also curbs inflammation. People who get at least 6 hours of sleep have lower blood levels of inflammatory proteins. If you have high levels of the inflammatory proteins, you're known to be susceptible to heart disease, stroke, diabetes, arthritis, and premature aging. I don't know if any of you saw in the news, it was about a month ago, one of the trainers from The Biggest Loser, Bob Harper, who obviously practices health and wellness, had a heart attack. And they said it was due to his sleep deprivation, his stress levels, and his work ethic, and not getting enough rest. So even though somebody looks to be healthy, maybe they're eating properly, maybe they're exercising, but they might not be doing sleep. And all these things contribute to your overall health and wellness. It also increases your creativity. In addition to helping your memory, your brain also reorganizes and restructures during sleep, which results in helping you to be more creative during the day. Easy one here is it improves your athletic performance and your stamina. A lot of you may be coaches, played athletics at high school or the collegiate level. You always knew the night before a big game or a big contest, you tried to get enough sleep. Also, when you're talking about sports, the Cavs, the Indians, and you're like, well, who's going to win? Who do you think is going to win? Maybe some of you bet. You always look, are they playing on the road? Or are they playing at home? Are they sleeping in familiar surroundings? Are they traveling? Because all those things contribute to your performance and stamina. It also improves your learning. Obviously, your brain actually rewires itself at night, so your learning abilities increase. It sharpens your attention span. In kids, a lot of times you'll see if they're lacking proper rest, they tend to be more hyperactive. They get that hyperactivity, ADHD. In adults, it doesn't sharpen our attention span, but what it does is that if we lack sleep, our impulsiveness increases. So this kind of makes me laugh because I think of a lot of times I'll find myself up at 1 or 2 in the morning. Every channel on cable is the infomercials, as seen on TV. Why do you think they play those late at night? Because late at night, when you're tired and you haven't got enough rest, you're more likely to buy the Hurricane 360 spin mop and not think twice about it. Whereas if during the day you see that spin mop, you're like, why would I pay $19.99 for that? I can just go get the mop in the bucket and be done with it. I've actually heard people, they say like 4 days later, something shows up on their doorstep and they're like, I didn't even remember ordering that in the middle of the night. So that's why they do that, because in adults, if we lack sleep, we're more impulsive. It does aid weight loss. If you want to think about losing pounds, think about going to bed a little bit earlier. This happens because the same side of your brain controls sleep and your metabolism. So the less sleep you get, the hungrier you're going to feel, and then you also produce hormones that make your appetite increase. So stress. Obviously, the less stress you are, probably the better sleep you're going to get, but the more sleep you get, you're also going to be less stressed. So those two just kind of go hand in hand. And then the lower stress levels you have, the less likely you are for cardiovascular disease. Also, it helps avoid depression. Lack of sleep just contributes to depression. You're more emotionally stable after a good night's sleep. And last, a positive effect is you'll have less accidents. And this could mean workplace accidents. It's said that the most fatal car crashes, single car crashes, come from fatigue, not even from alcohol or drugs. It's more lack of sleep. Another interesting fact is, and I did not know this until I started researching, there were tragic world events that were actually caused by sleep deprivation. The Challenger space shuttle explosion, the Exxon Valdez oil spill, 3 Mile Island, Flight 1420, and the Canadian National train wreck. The actual Exxon Valdez spill happened because the people that were working actually were working 16 to 18-hour shifts, and a third mate fell asleep at the wheel around 11 a.m., and the rest is history. So because they were overworked and lacking sleep, that's why that occurred and dumped 11 million gallons of oil into the ocean. Chernobyl was another one. The most nuclear disaster in history. The power plant exploded after engineers worked 13 hours or more, and investigators actually ruled that sleep deprivation was behind the accident that led to the explosion. The actual number of deaths resulting from the explosion is unknown, although there are at least 240 cases of radiation sickness. 3 Mile Island, although it wasn't Chernobyl, it's the most catastrophic nuclear event on U.S. soil. And the reactor core started to melt between 4 and 6 in the morning. The accident was caused by sleep deprivation, according to the official investigation. And cleaning up the accident cost $1 billion and halted nuclear power plants in the United States. And no new reactors have been built on U.S. soil since. The Challenger explosion actually was contributed to lack of sleep. The managers who were part of the launch slept for just 2 hours before arriving to work on that morning at 1 a.m. And because of the temperature, they didn't do the right test to see what would happen because they had extreme low temperatures that day. And instead, they said they made an impulsive decision to go ahead with the launch. And we know what the result of that was then. So you can't add up extra hours of sleep. Once you've lost it, it's gone. And you can't save them later in your body. But the sleep deprivation and lack of does accumulate in your system. So the more sleepless nights you get, the more compounded they are on each other. And as you can see from all these events, it has deadly consequences. So then in the last one, the Flight 1420 and the Canadian National Train Wreck, both those, the NTSB said, were contributed from impaired performance resulting from lack of sleep. So when you think about how serious sleep is and how much you need it, it's definitely something that you need to do. So I'm going to pass these around, and this just shows how fatigue affects you, your behavior, and your body. You guys can just pass those back around then. And we're just going to go ahead and read through this real quick. It does affect your behavior a lot. I know a lot of you, I'm irritable when I don't have enough sleep. You're easily distracted and more forgetful. It increases your moodiness and emotional sensitivity, impairs your judgment and ethics. It elevates your stress levels. You have a higher sense of lack of concern. Your pressure becomes harder to manage. You reduce your productivity. You have an increased chance of causing errors. So I know, like quality control, probably out in production. The days that you don't feel like you've gotten enough rest, you're more apt to make those mistakes. You're more likely to cause or be involved in an accident. Your resilience declines, and you increase your likelihood of missing work or not completing your work on time. Then at the other side of it is your body. And then it affects your brain, your immune system, your heart, your liver and pancreas, your stomach, and your skin. And you can go ahead and read through those and see exactly all the different things it can do to your body. So the effects of sleep deprivation, again, irritability, cognitive impairment, that ability to learn, memory lapses or loss, impaired moral judgment, severe yawning, hallucinations, symptoms similar to ADHD, that hyperactivity. It impairs your immune system, so you're more likely to get colds, flu, infections. And then also, if you do get those, it takes you a longer time to feel better. That's why they always say rest is the best medicine. It impairs your immune system, and then it also increases your risk of diabetes and type 2 because your pancreas does not work correctly when you're not restoring it and sleeping. It increases, again, your heart rate. It causes tremors and aches. It decreases your reaction time and accuracy. Again, that's why there's so many car accidents, because your reaction time is delayed. Other things, growth suppression. You'll hear a lot of moms talk about when their child's going through a growth spurt that they require so much sleep, and that's because their body's actually growing, so they need to repair it. Your risk of obesity increases, and also your risk of a decreased temperature. So now that we know we need the sleep, let's think about, okay, so how and can we do tips for your best sleep ever? So these are some of the things that I tried because I know that I need to work on it. So you need to stick to a sleep schedule, even on the weekends, because this helps regulate your body's internal clock. So be consistent. And the goal on the weekends, even though I know we all like to sleep in, is to not sleep in for more than 1 hour on the weekends. So if you're getting up at 6 o'clock Monday through Friday, you should be up by 7 Saturday and Sunday. The other trick is to go to bed earlier, but do it in gradual increments. So if I'm going to bed at midnight and I want to start going to bed at 11, for the first week I'm going to go to bed at 11:45. Then the next week 11:30, 11:15, till you get to your goal of when you actually want to go to sleep. So the next thing would be, and this is something I tried, was to dim the lights at night. And I'm not talking about your overhead lights. These are things that on your telephone, your tablets, your computers, your TVs. They produce that blue light. So like on my phone, there's apps that are, mine is called a night mode app. They're free. And then you set it like at 8 o'clock, my phone will go to night mode. And it just takes like an orange tint. It takes that brightness away. And I actually think that this has helped me because I wasn't ready to give up scrolling through Facebook at 9 o'clock at night. I wasn't ready to give up watching TV. So there's things that you can do that can help. Now, they also said not to watch TV or those things an hour prior to bedtime because you have that emotional connection. If you're watching The Walking Dead or All About Us, you go to bed feeling emotional, your body isn't going to go into that state of unconsciousness as easily. So, and then the light actually stops the melatonin, which is what you need to start the sleep process. So that's why a lot of people who work midnights, their internal clock is so messed up and they have to have complete darkness because you can't have any light or the melatonin isn't produced. So third one is something I tried to was to skip the snooze button. So I put the alarm clock away from the bed so I can't just hit it aimlessly. I have to actually get up and turn it off. But I would be lying to tell you I didn't get up and turn it off and go right back to bed because I did do that a couple times. But it did help. There were days that I got up and I'm like, okay, I'm up. I'm just going to stay up. Food for thought, you should always try to eat your last meal 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. And then obviously, no alcohol, caffeine, because those are stimulants before you go to bed, and you just won't reach that restful sleep that you need. The other one, have a bedtime ritual. This just, your brain gets trained, okay, you brush your teeth, wash your face, so your body is like, okay, this is what we do before we go to bed. Our bodies are smart. They know what we're doing. So if you start a bedtime ritual, then this will help your body start to relax and get ready for that sleep. This one's just pretty simple. Don't take late afternoon naps because it's harder to go to sleep. And if you do, they say like the 15 to 20 minute power nap is the best. Goes without saying is to exercise daily. Some people, though, it's not a good thing to exercise. I can't be an evening exerciser because my body is wired then and I can't rest. So for a lot of people, get the exercise in the morning. It actually also increases the quality of sleep that you get, also not the time. Evaluate your room. And this is something that I didn't realize, but the room temperature that you should sleep in should be between 60 and 67 degrees. Because when your body temperature cools down, that will set your body into sleep mode. So that's something I actually did too, and I think that that helps. It goes without saying, make sure you have a good mattress and pillow. And if you can't sleep, go into another room so that, because your room should be reserved for sleep, nothing else. So go into another room, not necessarily, and don't do anything active because that's just going to delay the process of you actually going to sleep. So go into another room, and then when you start feeling and dozing off, go back to bed. Then one of the other funny things that I read about, and I've actually just recently moved, so I'm trying it. I don't know if it works. But I read somewhere that your bed should always be facing north because the gravitational pull on the equator, that if your bed faced west to east, then the pull is working against you. So I'm trying it. I don't know. Could be just one of those things, but we'll see. So with that being said, now we know we need to sleep. Tips to get better sleep. How many hours of sleep do we actually need? So those of you with kids, you obviously know the younger you are, the more hours of sleep. So a newborn needs up to 14 to 18 hours of sleep, whereas teens, not so much, 9 to 10. But I think we probably all fall in the adults, 18 and up, so we require about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So in your brain right now, I want you to say, okay, I go to bed at what time, I get up at what time. Are you anywhere near that 7 to 9 hours? You're yawning. You're yawning and shaking your head. Yes, so maybe 7 to 9 isn't enough. But for most of us, I mean, I'm guilty. I get about 6 on a good night. So you really need, this will affect your overall health and wellness sometimes a lot more than what you eat or exercise. So just make sure that you're getting enough sleep. And just to end it, I have a quote that sleep is that golden chain that ties health and our bodies together. And one last thing I have to give before you go, I do have a quiz for you, but you can just take it along. It's just kind of interesting. This is from the Center for Sleep Disorders. There's 24 questions. You just go down through it and mark the ones that pertain to your life, and then read through at the bottom. It'll tell you some of the things that may be occurring that's causing you not to be able to sleep. So, all right. Thank you guys for coming.